everyone, I'm Caroline Hill. I'm Editor-in-Chief of Legal IT Insider, and welcome to our webinar with Nutanix today on surviving the energy crisis and building a sustainable IT infrastructure. By the end of 2022, energy costs are likely to represent over 40% of the total infrastructure costs of an organisation, with that situation predicted to worsen. And in my conversation today with Nutanix and Grant Thornton, we'll be exploring how IT teams can survive the energy crisis and build a long-term sustainable IT infrastructure. Today I'm speaking with Nutanix cloud economists, plural, Steen Dalgas and Paul Smuts. Steen is a qualified chartered accountant and a trusted advisor to Nutanix customers. He helps them to understand the financial value of the software and how to find the most affordable model for their business. Hi, Steen.
Hi, Caroline.
Thank you for joining me. And I'm here with Paul, who has over 15 years of experience in technology and finance at Nutanix. His focus is also on assisting customers with the financial and business case modeling to optimize their strategic investment decisions. Hi, Paul.
Hi, good afternoon.
Thank you. And last but very much not least, the client, Tom Gilbert is Senior Infrastructure Manager at accountancy giant Grant Thornton. He's helped to oversee a shift towards a more sustainable and efficient IT infrastructure, a Nutanix project that's very much still ongoing and evolving. Hi, Tom.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you very much. I hope I did justice to those introductions. Please do correct me if I've got anything wrong. This is going to be very much an interactive webinar. It's great to see people coming in live, and if you're listening on the replay, very much looking forward to this next 40 minutes and learning more about some of the work that, learning more about sustainability, to be completely frank with you, and also some more of the work that Grant Thornton's doing with Nutanix. We welcome your questions at any time. Please say who you are in the chat. I am going to come on to let Steen really set the scene, first of all, but I wanted to ask you a question, whether you're listening live or on replay. If you're live, post the answers in the chat. What industry has the biggest climate change impact? Is it tech or is it fashion? And I'm going to come back to that. Or Steen is actually going to answer that.
So Caroline, you were going to. It was actually airline industry. You said fashion.
Oh, sorry, airline industry. Sorry.
Yeah.
Do you know what?
So,
that was my fault.
I think the fashion's pretty bad as well. But
you know what, you're quite right. But you're quite right, because when I first wrote it, I put fashion, and then I changed it to airline, and I've deleted airline instead of fashion. My mistake. Yeah. Right. Okay. Replay. Is it what's worse, tech or airline? We're going to come back to you. So we're speaking. It's a very challenging economic period. Budgets are being reduced. Tech teams are ever more conscious of the need to become sustainable. Clients are putting pressure on us. But before we dive into the weeds, Steen, let's talk about what sustainability really means.
Thanks, Caroline. So I got interested in this topic. So I'm an accountant. So and I've been watching what's been happening with the accountancy profession, and what we've seen is the investor community have piled funds. I think it's up to, I think the latest figures I saw was $30 trillion are now invested in ESG funds. So there's been a wholesale change in the way that all of our pensions are invested, and that the investment community have decided that sustainability is a much smarter way of doing business. So there's been like a battle for orthodoxy, and sustainability is won. And what sustainability means is the way that you run your business is trying to find a balance between short-term and long-term. So, and there's probably most businesses have been too guilty of being too short-term focused in the last 40 years. And actually, what that means is they've not invested enough in the future, and they found themselves in trouble. And so what the investment community are now demanding is a whole set of metrics so that they can work out which companies are sustainable and which ones are not running themselves sustainably. And so those metrics will need to be calculated and reported in the same way that you do your annual report. These metrics are going to need to be reported, and they're going to include things like carbon, energy consumption, your diversity. So these sorts of numbers will need to be measured. So things that, you know, a traditional business case for IT would be focused more narrowly on, is it going to save me money? Is it going to make me resilient? It's now going to look at much more what's the wider factors, like what's the energy consumption? And actually, isn't that a good idea? Because what have we suffered this year is we've seen a fourfold increase in the cost of energy. So hopefully Tom is sitting there smiling because he's got ahead of the game in terms of updating how he's done his IT. But so this one is just a call out that it's not just about regulation, but sustainability is about running your business smarter and getting that balance. So hopefully that sort of sets the scene.
Yeah, it does. How much of when we sort of started promoting this webinar, I think there was quite a lot of emphasis on cost savings. How much do you think for corporates is the driver cost savings, and how much of it is ESG goals, or is that a really stupid question? It's sort of if you understand.
No, it's a really good question. And so here's the thing. So now it needs to be both. So every investment needs to be what's called a 2-for-1 investment. So it needs to save money, and it needs to be smart from a business perspective, but it also needs to be sustainable. So and this is a big change in business. So previously we would just be looking at the cost, and now we need to look more broadly sustainably as well. So okay, so that's the fundamental change.
Can you answer my question? Like the one that I murdered at the beginning, instead of saying so what was the worst contributor to in terms of climate change? Is it tech, or is it airline industry?
So we actually got a third-party consultancy, because I didn't know the answer to this question, and we got a third-party consultancy called Atlantic Ventures, and they published a white paper which you can find on the web in conjunction with Nutanix. And the answer is if you're just looking in purely business terms, at the moment we're the same. So IT is equally as bad as the airline industry. So we're about 2% of global emissions, both of us. And then if you factor in the consumer piece, then IT is much worse. So all the devices we're using at home. And here's the thing. So we haven't really started on the digitalization journey. We're just really at the beginning. Once we start properly digitalizing, that figure, that 2%, is going to be 10% within 10 years. So it's like scary. So we all have to get a grip on this topic, and this is going to be the big challenge to everybody working in tech. This is going to be the challenge for our generation.
Yeah, no, that is really scary. Post in the chat, as I think if you've joined after I sort of did a brief intro, this is interactive. We really welcome your questions at any point. Please don't wait till the right moment. There's going to be no right moment. We're just going to have a great chat. I'm grateful to everybody for being here. So please, say if you want to say who you are, post any comments or questions in the chat. Please do join in. So Tom, so you recently I guess these things are always going to be very long running, but you've undertaken a big project to modernize your infrastructure. So can you first of all describe what you I'd like to do before now, and perhaps a more forward-looking take on it. So describe what your tech stack was like before.
Yeah, of course. So before I sort of explain the tech stack that we had before, we had a vision sort of 7-8 years ago that we wanted a cloud-first strategy, and that was, we didn't want to look after our own data centers and all the pain and struggles and things that come with that, but also in terms of providing and getting managed services and removing lots of administration, lots of things that we look after, and get our IT teams to be focusing on things that add value to the business rather than actually let's just focus on keeping the lights on. So we started that journey, and 4 years ago was a time when we were coming to refresh our infrastructure that we got in the data centers, and what that looked like was 2 physical data centers made up of HP servers connected to EMC SANs, running Microsoft Hyper-V and also VMware as well. And we were talking sort of 15 racks of kit in one of the data centers, and about 5 racks in another, in our sort of backup DR data center. So that's what we had. And when we were looking at this, this cloud first strategy, we really had the vision that we wanted, again, let's get out of our own data centers, let's do that. Now, you talked about cost. And mentioning cost, well, cost was prohibitive to us to actually move everything from our data center, and it was not something that we could sort of just lift and shift and move into a cloud provider. because of the expense of doing that was so vast. We really needed to sort of pick opportunities to move things to cloud. So when systems are, we're looking at new systems, new solutions, upgrades, that we would move them to SaaS solutions at the appropriate time, or redesign applications when was appropriate to sort of fit that cloud model. So we went through an exercise to do that. We couldn't get to that point. So it was, well, what can we do now to sort of set ourselves up again to continue the journey? And that's where conversations we'd had with Nutanix and it was Lenovo at the time around sort of set ourselves up ready to be able to move to the cloud. And that's where the hyperconverged came as something we hadn't really thought about. And the hyperconverged solution with Nutanix is, it was all about reducing our hardware, reducing the footprint that we'd got in our data centers, but also it was around that administration, that supporting the solution. How could we do something that would actually reduce what we're required to do? Because in our old world of HP SAN, HP servers and EMC SANs, becoming more and more pressured that people would having to become sort of experts or have levels of expertise on those hardware systems, keeping them up to date, vulnerabilities, patching, all those sort of things. And it was becoming far more technical. Either we would have to do that ourselves, or we'd have to start getting managed services to look after those for us. But that's where we came with the Lenovo Nutanix solution, and that was where it was a bit of a game changer, really, that, when we first went through this exercise, that this was hyper-converged infrastructure, this simplifying that whole tech stack. And, the big selling point to me was around, this stuff looks after itself. You're not going to have to administer this. You're not going to be 24/7. Capacity management, all these things suddenly became a lot easier. And I think, we were a little bit skeptical of the sales chat around this will really work, and this is it. But reference calls, all those sort of things alleviate any concerns that we got there. And so we've now got we've now moved to a colo data center for our backup and DR. And we've got 2 hyperconverged clusters with everything replicating to each other. And this has made, it is about that reduction of admin and overhead, but the resilience that it's provided, the ease of us being able to demonstrate our business continuity and disaster recovery plans simplified as well. It's click of a button, all those sort of things, whereas before it would be sheets and sheets of procedures that you're going to have to go through on this system, this system, this system. So just click of a button. And so, for us, it's become this very simple, and it has looked after itself. And we've had that in now for 3 years. But the journey doesn't stop there. But anything else you want to talk about where we've got to? Or
no, that's great. That's really interesting. So you moved to hyperconverged 3 years ago?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And have you, I know it's quite difficult, but have you been able to talk, can you talk about ROI, or have you been able to demonstrate ROI since then?
Yeah, I think sometimes it's quite difficult to sort of ROI and how you're going to get, putting a number on it. So I'm not going to put a number as such, but in terms of it, what we've been able to do has been able to support our business better. So, we're less IT. My role, for example, I'm called an infrastructure manager. It's less around infrastructure, and it's more about us providing service to our business. And over the last 3 years, the business is really sort of this digital transformation piece, but also the demands of clients, solutions that we need to provide to clients. It's enabled us to be able to support the business on a lot of those digital strategies. And as an IT function, we're becoming more of a consultancy to the business rather than, in terms of if it's an area of business wanting to create an application to do something, we're the people that are there as a layer of governance more than anything, and understanding what we do. So that wouldn't have been able to happen at the scale it's happened without us taking more resource on. So that's certainly that.
With
And-
regard to, I mean, the cloud, it's interesting. I do quite a lot of panels, and in the UK, we're still talking about I write a lot about law firms, and we're still having that conversation
Yeah.
about, you know, aren't they going to move to the cloud? And I was doing this panel in the US, and they were saying, well, it's not even really a conversation, is it? And I said, well, actually, it still is, actually, rightly or wrongly. But so I think, you know, to me, it's just, you know, as far as the cloud's a no-brainer. In terms of the ESG, so the real drivers for it. So obviously there's all the drivers of the cloud, of which we probably don't need to go into. But in terms of from the sustainability ESG perspective, how much of a driver, or for either from your internally from a corporate perspective or from a client perspective, was that, do you think?
But being honest, when we start to look at this, you know, when we started the exercise 4 years ago, it wasn't really necessarily about that. It was about reducing our footprint, and you know, ESG probably was sort of there, but it wasn't one of those key parts in the decision making process. But that's changed, and what we're doing, you know, next, and I think what we're going to talk about is, you know, is very different now, and is embedded in anything that we are going to be doing going forward. But yeah, no, it wasn't necessarily, and I, you know, might sort of sit here smiling, thinking, yes, we reduced what we're doing. It wasn't the main driver, but it certainly now is. It's demonstrated the value of doing that, and also sort of backed up what we've done. But also going forward, you know, it is a key thing that we will be. It's not considering; it's something we have to do. So. Yeah.
So Caroline, can I ask a question? So
Yeah.
I was just going to say frame. So I think what Tom was saying was, you know, if just to play it back, is that you were saying you were struggling to find an ROI, but if you were then to step back and then start to bring in ESG factors such as, you know, the time saved, happier people, you transform the role of IT. So from a people side, and then also from an energy side, you have massively reduced your footprint, reduced your energy consumption, reduced carbon. If you were now to look back at the business case and bring sustainability in, you've actually made your IT much more sustainable.
Yes.
And that business case would be much more powerful. So if we were to do like a backward looking business case there. Yeah. And I think if we were looking back, and when we were making those decisions back then, if there was the ESG element to it, it would have been an easier decision or approval to make in terms of the process we're doing. So we did have some challenges around, well, what we're going to do here is actually a bit more expensive than some alternative solutions, but why do we want to do them? And that was all about the longer term gains that we were going to do, and how we wanted to function as an IT function going forward, and to be able to support the business. So yeah, the ROI is there. It's just in terms of, you know, what's that is, if we wanted to put cash and pounds and dollars to it, what would that look like? It's hard to sometimes sort of quantify, but yeah.
Let's bring Paul in at this stage. So Paul, is that reflective of sort of your wider experience in terms of how projects have evolved? And I think to me it sounds reflective of the way ESG has certainly evolved. But how does it compare with other projects that you're working on?
Sure. So, I mean, not scripted at all. I was about to unmute and jump in anyway. Exactly what Tom described there is how I am sure Steen and the other cloud economists across EMEA and worldwide would say the same. It's exactly how our engagements have played out over the last 3-4 years, right? We sort of included a line in our TCO business case evaluation that was cost of energy. Right, because we could say, oh, a 3-tier world moving to HCI, this is what you're paying per kilowatt hour, and this is what you're going to pay on Nutanix, smaller footprint, all good. And, you know, ESG was it's good. You know, there's a bit of a tick in the box there that we've covered off a bit of ESG. Really, in the last 6-12 months, that's changed dramatically for a host of reasons, but it's changed from a small element to one of the key elements of. And we've got a bunch of data to show now, but that cost of energy has now become pretty comparable to the cost of hardware itself in a lot of instances. And that cost of energy, because it's such a big line now, people are looking and talking a lot more about, okay, how much energy are we using? How does that now translate into CO2 and the emissions discussion? So it's really, if we do the look back conversation like Tom described and Steen described, we're getting very positive results of customers who say, we're really pleased we did this because now it's ticking a big and important box internally, and it's something we can talk about to our customers and shareholders, because it's really critically important to shareholders. But increasingly, our Steen and myself are using this as part of our customer engagements for new business, new opportunity to help justify, because it's sort of one of the three key pillars, I'd say, in the decision making at Exco level in particular.
If I could just jump in and just say, if you were trying to, if you're listening live and you wanted to put something in the chat, apologies if you were struggling, we had a couple of tech issues, but that's now should be working. So please do jump in with any questions, and apologies if you tried to already and you weren't able to. Is it, so in terms of tech and infrastructure, so presumably this is a C-suite decision with the CIO. I suppose it depends on the organization. Where are you seeing sort of these projects originate, and also is it I know you sort of touched on it already, but are you seeing, presumably you are seeing significantly increased client pressure?
Yeah, it's been really interesting 6 months really, because and it really is in that shorter time frame. I think when we were having these discussions 6 to 9 months ago, it was on the CFO radar, the finance community radar, a lot more than it was in the technical community, because we all know there is a lot more reporting governance coming down the track for ESG and emissions, potential taxes based on emissions. So the finance community already had an eye on this. And so did the, because it was so important to shareholders, that's also a big driver, right? They wanted to be able to talk about, tell customers what they were doing. And we actually did, Steen ran a round table around 4 months ago and asked 10 CIOs of large organizations around the table, where does ESG sit? And it was pretty low down. We ran one maybe a month and a half ago, and it was one of the top 3. So in that shorter time frame, it really has pivoted. I think, being candid, it's been driven by cost. The cost of that power has really come to the fore. And now people are talking about ESG, CO2, because it's directly relatable to that a lot more. So C-suite was CFO, that's moved to CIO, and that just comes down the track to everyone. You know, how can you help? How can we support those C-suite messages for customers and shareholders?
That's so interesting. And then I heard, and this is for anybody. So I was listening to a podcast on sustainable IT, and someone made to you. You probably heard this 1,000 times, but I really like the expression. They said, "Well, you can't. I'm going to murder this now. You can't. Where is it? You can't measure what you. Where is it? You can't manage what you can't measure. That's it. You can't manage what you can't measure." And they were talking about a lot of these projects falling down on data. You know, the visibility. And I know this is obviously where you guys, you know, you have specialism, and I know you all have done a lot of work at Grant Thornton on this. What sort of, how many projects fall down because of lack of data? That's to anybody, I suppose. Paul, perhaps.
So cool. So I guess from the Nutanix engagement side, a lot, right? And I'm talking more about maybe our success rate in terms of delivering Nutanix outcomes for customers, because we haven't got the data we need to work through to a positive business case, or more importantly, the business value. What value can moving to HCI, Nutanix, one of the offerings there, bring to an organization? And when we get successful outcomes where we worked on detailed business cases like we did with GT, it's the customer feedback's great. Thanks for helping us collate the data, present it back to other stakeholders in a meaningful manner. So of critical importance. And the data now, I mentioned briefly in the previous answer, is around reporting, governance, regulation. That's going to that's coming in imminently. So the need for Tom and his peers to gather that data, understand the data, is going to get ever more important, I think. Steen?
I mean, just a simple example is, so Tom, did you have a good view on your footprint before you moved to Nutanix? So what you had in your data center, and how much energy it was burning. Did you have that?
No,
Yeah.
we didn't. Not really. No, it
Yeah.
would be, no, we didn't. And
yeah. So where we're going, we've been amiss as a company as well, and this is actually this is a whole pan IT industry challenge, is that getting real live data on energy consumption from the data center. So we can't provide that yet for our customers, but we're going to fix that pretty quickly. So Tom, that's something you're going to see from Nutanix, but that's the type of data you need. So we can now do this in our own data centers, is we've got real live data at the rack level, how much energy is being consumed, and also the cost. Because exactly, if you've got those two pieces of information, you can then make more informed decisions about where you run your workloads. Is it cheaper to run them in that data center? Should you start to use public cloud more? And that's really because what we haven't really touched on is this new sort of hybrid cloud world where you've got private cloud, which is a bit like how what Tom's running, but I know, Tom, you're also running some public clouds, SaaS type workloads as well. So yeah. So we're going to see that. That's going to be, I think, a big change in the industry. We're going to see more of this sort of hybrid type world. And Tom, I mean, what's your thoughts around public cloud? I mean, firstly, why did you not decide to move everything into public cloud and go to a private cloud type model first? Was this the reason behind that?
I think public cloud at the time, it was too expensive in terms of the cost, but also the effort to actually move and migrate applications. There are cost savings that can be made with public cloud, but you need to re-engineer applications. You also need to have applications that fit best in there. There's no point sort of lifting and shifting a virtual machine and a SQL server or whatever exactly as it is up into the public cloud to get the savings that you wanted. So that was a prohibitive thing to us. And I think also there was still a little bit of skepticism around, what's this going to look like, and price predictability, and in terms of contracts and things that we're dealing with. There's far more pressure now trying to get predictability of cost, and even when you're signing up to 3-year contracts for anything now, we're also looking at trying to get caps in there for the renewal to say, what's the renewal going to look like, and that's something that we couldn't get, and certainly can't get with a sort of a public cloud provider. So I think there was a risk there, and I think what we felt was that this is our sort of stepping stone to the next iteration of what we do, which is going to be, more in cloud, more maybe managed service, all those sort of things, which I can talk in a bit more detail. But yeah, that was the main reason.
Why don't you, Tom? It would be great to hear talking about your future projects as you move to as a service. So do you want to talk us through where you're at now?
Yeah. So I think over the last 4 or 5 years, we've come from a place where thinking around putting things as a managed service is a concern, not only for you letting go of things that you've always cared about and controlled and felt that you really you got the heartbeat of a system, a solution, or whatever it is, but also people understanding what that means to them around moving to managed service. We've sort of halfway gone there with lots of things. So Nutanix, for example, the support that we get from Nutanix, and sort of we no longer having to be experts on these things, was a little bit of it's support. How's support going to work? It will be in a queue and it's an emergency and all that sort of thing. But that's been the opposite. And I think contractually with managed service providers, things are a lot better in terms of what you're going to get from them. So we've learned some lessons there. We've moved things to be managed, whether it's looking after our SQL estate that sits in Nutanix, the Nutanix platform, but our laptops as well. We do sort of a managed service for that side of things. Where we see us going next is it really is around us continuing to be able to, as an IT function, to be able to add value back to the business. that's what we have to continue to doing and supporting the business on their initiatives. So the next step is really, right, we have got this stuff in data centers. We don't want our own data centers. There is no value. We are not the experts. We're not a data center company. That's where we need to engage managed services where they are the experts. Even security side of things that we do, whether it's SOC or a managed detect and response solution, everything's becoming far more difficult to sustain. And you can't be that one-stop IT function that covers everything anymore. It's all around the services that the business requires, and us sort of managing those. So we want to get rid of our data centers. That's the next thing we're doing over the next year, is what solution do we do to get rid of that actual infrastructure on premise and give that to somebody else. And I think what we've learned, and we're in the early stages of that, what we've learned is what we've done from a hyperconverged perspective has been a great step, because this has given us some options that can maybe make it very easy for us to move to a cloud managed service solution without the need to sort of re-engineer, recreate a load of VMs, recreate a Citrix farm, all these sort of things that take time. So and also not getting to a point of, when we get rid of a data center, that it's sort of this big bang weekend that we're going to shift. We want to slowly migrate this and reduce the risk around that transformation as well. So and also predictability of cost is key. And also, we're going to have this footprint of traditional VMs that, we have that with Nutanix in a cloud somewhere or whatever. It's also about, we still believe that SaaS is the way forward for most of our things. And our maybe not the thing that Nutanix must necessarily want to hear, but in terms of, what we have on Nutanix, we expect to reduce. And being able to have that flexibility as well is key, in terms of, we've not got fixed costs for a load of this stuff over the next 3 to 5 years. It's something flexible that we can, flex down on. But, if the firm makes acquisitions, we do things, we want to be able to flex up as well. So that's a key thing for us. And Nutanix is great on our converged infrastructure, but we're tied to infrastructure and hardware, and that can be constructed. You can be constrained in terms of, we've all seen, chip shortage solution, that we've got. So, supply chain, all of those things are concerns that I don't want us to have anymore.
This is a huge change management project, isn't it? I mean, there must have been an awful lot of work on this behind the scenes.
Yes, there has. Yeah, definitely.
How much, we're talking about sustainability.
Yeah.
A lot of what you said makes absolute sense. But what role will sustainability play, or does sustainability play? And perhaps this might be a nice opportunity to bring back to what you were saying about ESG initially not being much of a factor, but the sort of the place it holds now.
Yeah, no, it is absolutely a fundamental part to it. So I'm talking around us, being experts in everything, being open and honest now, as an IT function, just procuring a solution or service or contracts from people now it requires expertise in lots of different levels. So, all I'm really bothered about is the service that we're going to get and what solution it provides. But now we have a procurement team, we have an environmental team, and they all feed into anything that we're doing, working with our suppliers, how we are going to procure or take a solution. We'll go through a process where it's going through procurement and it's going through environmental, and that they are the people that we're getting the support from to make sure that we make the right decisions for the right reasons. So it is I think you're talking about those 3 pillars, Paul. It is certainly that, and the driver is there. And as we know as a business, we're providing guidance and support to our clients, particularly just around ESG, because that's the requirement of reporting that's going to be coming. So yeah, if we weren't doing it, I'd be worried, considering we're talking to our clients about it. So, yes, yeah.
Paul or Steen, did you have any observations on that?
I think so many, that's why I love doing these things. There's so many great things that come out of just getting customers talking, right? And if we all had more time, Tom sort of highlighted so many big topic areas there. If we think, I guess, purely sustainability, right, what we're seeing is exactly what Tom described, is that customers realizing, you know what, I don't want to run my own data center. It's not my speciality. It's costly. I want to get out. And if we think about sort of impact on CO2, the two biggest things are modernize your infrastructure. So get off 3-tier, and let's call it cooling and heating. And where does that sit? That sits in, you go to a provider, a colo, who is an expert, who has built that data center to be as energy efficient as possible. So just the move from your own data center or your own little compute cupboard that's in the back of the office somewhere, that's got a big aircon in it, to a specialist colo provider on hyper-converged infrastructure, you are making material. They are the two biggest areas to make savings or reductions in your CO2. And you then overlay this cloud topic that sort of Tom talked about, and it's where Nutanix was maybe 3 years ago at the start of the journey, where we were an infrastructure. You're still an infrastructure drag, albeit we were ticking a lot of positive boxes, smaller footprint, better environmental costs, etc. We've got the simplicity that our software brings, which is great, helping teams like Tom give back more to the organization outside of keep the lights on. But where Nutanix has now moved to is run Nutanix in the cloud. We are now essentially only a software, and that software can run on hyper-converged in a colo, giving you the benefits I guess we've discussed so far. But you can also run Nutanix software in Azure or in AWS, and it's seamless. You get to cloud quicker. You don't have to do any of this refactoring, replatform that takes time, huge cost. You can get to cloud quickly, and you can put it in AWS because it's running on a bare metal server like it would be in a colo. If it's not working in AWS, it could be cheap in Azure, you move it there. So the whole, and still sticking with sustainability, running workloads or VMs on bare metal, so Nutanix in those public cloud providers, we've proved out to be better CO2, better ESG than if you run cloud native. So this sort of all underpins into simplicity, cost reduction, better sort of ESG messaging is exactly what sort of Steen and I are now trying to play out with our customers. Sorry, Steen, a bit of a long-worded input there from me.
Yeah. So I just saw a question from Vin actually in the chat saying, asking about, just highlighting that some of the data center companies have put their prices up, and it's part of this sort of energy piece, and so really a lot of these data center companies are effectively becoming energy companies, and that's why, because this energy is becoming so complex. And if you understand what's going on at a macro level, that so organizations like AWS and Equinix and Microsoft are doing what's called power purchase agreements, which are these long-term agreements, so they can get access to energy at a cheaper cost. But in the short term, they're being hit by these big wholesale price changes, and that's why they're putting their prices up. And some companies like SunGard, I don't know if you're aware, they're a major player in business continuity, but they got the energy piece wrong, and they've gone out of business. So it's that sort of serious. And I think what Paul and Thomas is highlighting is really where we see the future is each provider should have their area of expertise and ownership in terms of the sustainability piece. So you'll have the data center provider will try and provide that data center as sustainably as possible, and they'll own the energy piece and the headache of getting renewables energy and dealing with all of that, which Tom doesn't want to have to deal with. The Nutanix piece is our software is all about, we are really good at how you're optimizing how you consume resources. And we've done a good job for Tom in his colo, and we're now bringing that same software into public cloud. and making it possible to consume resources in public cloud really more cost effectively and with less resources, which brings your CO2 emissions down. You then got the hardware vendors who are going to have to make their hardware more sustainable, recyclable, last longer. And then you'll have like the partners bringing their sort of value into the whole stream. So you're talking about a whole ecosystem here, with each party having to think about their piece. And from Tom's side, you're going to have your own responsibilities, which is we could get you this great sustainable solution, but you need to manage it effectively. So think about how you can become more sustainable. So you can't outsource it all to the supply chain. So it's this sort of understanding this whole big piece. So I mean, and we're, you know, so it was just great to hear you saying about your evolution, because that's naturally where we're going as a company as well. So we're in complete agreement that no customer in their right mind would want to own a data center, manage that, or deal with the energy, or become an energy company, because Grant Thornton is not an energy company. Why would you? So it doesn't make any sense. So I think it's quite nice. We're actually on a call where we're generally all in agreement, Caroline. I don't know what's going on.
I've not done my job. I think we should have a bit of a fight. You know,
we're not fighting. Yeah.
I think this is a bit of a disappointingly convivial experience. Do you? I mean, that might be a nice place to end it. I don't know if you want to talk about governance, or if you feel like we've addressed governance. I think that obviously.
So that's the one bit. That's the one bit. So Tom could bash us with. So. So maybe you can tell us how we can make your life easier. I think. What would you be? You know, because the governance piece, again, it's massively important. So, Tom.
Yeah. So the governance piece. So I think. I'm learning more about the governance piece and what we're requiring to do, or what we are doing as a business. So I think from a governance perspective, there are a couple of elements. One of them is around, you know, putting that pressure on your suppliers and understanding your suppliers. You know, we do all these things with security questionnaires. It's now sort of environmental questionnaires, and making sure that. You know, I think there will be suppliers that you're going to sort of have to take along that journey with you, that they don't quite get it or understand it, but hopefully I think that's going to change, given what we're going through at the moment. But there's also some internal governance, and one piece is I think it is a challenge, and we're trying to address is internally people understanding what ESG is, and it plays a part every day in terms of the decisions that they're making and the things that they're doing. And we're going to be sort of, you know, training people, making sure they understand that, because I think that education piece is key. And once you've got that governance, that is going to help you along that journey, I think.
It struck me throughout your conversation how much the resource side of things has been a factor, you know, sort of not having that resource, not wanting to be the experts. But I guess now, you know, you've got more opportunity. You've talked a few times about retraining in different contexts, but now you're going to have the ability to train more people to become, to be able to interrogate suppliers, to be the experts, etc. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think
they're
so,
not doing it themselves, but they're actually, you've got the ability to retrain people to really understand and to know what's supposed to be happening and all of that, because now actually do the thing itself.
Yeah, and people letting go of what they've owned before. You know, there's an element of this is mine, I'm looking after this, and there is a change in mindset of sort of, look, just admit it. You know, IT, that's great, that's what we're good at. Coming to contracts, am I really good at negotiating contracts and knowing what we should be doing and how to do it? No. So why don't we get somebody who does do that? And that's what the change has been over the past few years with the business, is getting that expertise and understanding where you need that support, and a change in mindset of people sort of letting go of some of their responsibilities that they thought that they were theirs. So yeah, not just retraining. I think, you know, there's a recruitment things that we've done. There's new exciting jobs and roles for people out there that now, who would have thought that in an accountancy firm that there would be jobs about the environment and how you can help the environment. So, you know, but there are. So
now within the accountancy sector, isn't it? I've been hearing about it a lot. So, and I think you're portraying it as exciting is quite right. Change is hard. You know, I write about change the entire time. It is hard. People feel threatened. People feel, you know, they're scared for their job or whatever. But actually, if you can pitch it in the right way, and if you can explain and you can bring people along, and if you could communicate what you're doing and why you're doing it, actually clinging on to what has been is not the right solution for anybody, but it's about making people feel not left behind and sort of very much a part of the project, I think, in my experience anyway.
No, I absolutely agree that it's about bringing people along with that, because the way we function as a business, for example, it's not 9 to 5 anymore, it's 24/7. And so, you know, I talk to my team, do you want to be 24/7? Do you want to do 24/7? Nobody wants to do that. And, you know, does the business want to pay for a 24/7 function that's going to support or can afford to do so? So, no, I think people are starting to understand that, you know, where their part is and where the value is that they add. And I think they've seen that. It's definitely taken them along with you, though.
Yeah. Well, look, it's been really fascinating talking to you. I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much for listening in. Thank you for your question. And I hope that we can continue. I know there's so much coming down the pipeline that, you know, there's different new regulation, which is going to, we may be talking about in a little while. And let's just keep in touch. And thank you very much for your time today, Steen, Tom and Paul. It's been great chatting with you.
Thanks, Caroline. Thanks, Tom.
Brilliant.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks all.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.